The cargo bay of the transport ship hummed with the steady rhythm of engines pushing through the void. Dr. Sarah Chen sat cross-legged on her bunk, reviewing data logs from the previous planetary survey on her tablet. The mission had been routine: catalog indigenous life forms, assess ecological balance, file reports. Nothing unusual, nothing dangerous. Until now. She heard the sound first, a soft scratching against the metal floor, followed by what could only be described as terrified chittering. Sarah set down her tablet and listened. The crew quarters were supposed to be sealed. No animals allowed in this section. Yet the sound persisted, growing more frantic. Sarah rose from her bunk and followed the noise to the corner where her extra blankets lay folded in a storage compartment. The scratching intensified. Slowly, she lifted the edge of the thermal blanket. 6 pairs of luminous eyes stared back at her. They were Carvathi cubs, no larger than house cats, with midnight blue fur that seemed to absorb light itself. Their elongated skulls housed rows of needle-sharp teeth, currently chattering in fear. Tiny claws, retractable and deadly even at this young age, kneaded nervously at the fabric. These weren't just any creatures. Adult Carvathi were apex predators on Xeron 7, capable of taking down prey 3 times their size. They were classified as extremely dangerous. The survey team had been warned to maintain a minimum distance of 50 meters at all times, and now 6 babies were hiding in her blanket. Sarah's first instinct should have been to call security. Protocol demanded immediate containment. The ship's xenobiologist would need to be notified. Captain Reeves would probably spacewalk the entire cargo bay if he knew predators were loose on his vessel. Instead, Sarah smiled. "Hey there, little ones," she whispered, keeping her voice soft and steady. "You're far from home, aren't you?" The cubs trembled, pressing closer together. The smallest one, barely the size of Sarah's hand, let out a pitiful mewling sound. They weren't aggressive. They were absolutely terrified. Sarah's mind raced through what she knew about Carvathi biology. They were pack hunters as adults, but cubs stayed with their mother for at least 6 standard months before developing their predatory instincts. These babies couldn't be more than a few weeks old. Their eyes still held that cloudy quality of newborns. Their movements were uncoordinated, clumsy. She glanced toward the cargo bay entrance. Someone on the survey team must have accidentally brought them aboard. Perhaps they'd nested in equipment containers during the loading process. Their mother was probably still on Xeron 7, frantically searching for her missing young. The thought made Sarah's chest ache. She couldn't send them back. They were days away from Xeron 7, and even if they turned the ship around, there was no guarantee they could locate the mother. These cubs would die without proper care. Returning them to the wild alone was a death sentence. But keeping them was insane. Wasn't it? The smallest cub ventured forward, its tiny pink nose twitching as it sniffed Sarah's extended hand. She remained perfectly still, letting the creature investigate. After a moment, it bumped its head against her palm. The universal gesture of a frightened baby seeking comfort. Sarah's heart melted. "Okay," she murmured. "Okay. We'll figure this out." She carefully gathered the edges of the blanket, creating a secure nest, and lifted the entire bundle onto her bunk. The cubs squeaked in protest at being moved, but settled quickly once they realized they were staying together. Sarah positioned herself on the edge of the mattress, her back against the wall, and opened her tablet again. She needed information. What did Carvathi cubs eat? What was their body temperature regulation like? Did they have any specific medical needs? The database was frustratingly sparse. Most research focused on adult Carvathi behavioral patterns and hunting techniques. Cubs were rarely observed in the wild, as mothers kept them hidden in deep burrows for the first months of life. There were notes about accelerated growth rates and a protein-rich diet, but nothing specific about care protocols. Sarah would have to improvise. She accessed the ship's galley inventory through her tablet, There were protein supplements designed for various species, including some high-calorie pastes used for emergency nutrition. It wasn't ideal, but it might work temporarily. She placed an order for delivery to her quarters, listing it under personal dietary needs. Nobody questioned a crew member's food choices on long voyages. While she waited, Sarah watched the cubs. They had relaxed slightly, no longer trembling with fear. The smallest one had fallen asleep, curled into a tight ball against its siblings. Another cub, slightly larger with a distinctive white patch on its chest, kept watch with suspicious eyes. It would occasionally growl softly when Sarah shifted position, but the sound lacked any real menace. It was all bravado, a baby pretending to be fierce. Sarah found it unbearably cute. A soft chime announced the delivery drone at her door. Sarah quickly stepped out, collected the package, and returned before anyone could peer inside her quarters. She unsealed the container and examined the protein paste. It had a vaguely unpleasant smell, but the nutritional breakdown seemed adequate. "Dinner time, babies," she announced softly. She squeezed a small amount onto her finger and offered it to the white-chested cub. It sniffed suspiciously, growled again, then tentatively licked the paste. Its eyes widened. Within seconds, all 6 cubs were climbing over each other, tiny mouths opening in demanding mules. Sarah laughed quietly and dispensed more paste onto a flat surface, letting them eat. They attacked the food with enthusiasm, their needle teeth occasionally catching her fingers. It didn't hurt. They were too young for their bite to do real damage, but she could imagine how formidable those jaws would become. As they ate, Sarah made a decision. She couldn't tell anyone about the cubs, not yet. The ship's protocols would demand they be placed in containment, studied, possibly even terminated as a safety hazard. She'd seen how the scientific community treated unknown variables. Everything was a specimen, a data point, a problem to be solved. These weren't problems. They were children. She would care for them during the journey, keep them hidden, and figure out a proper solution once they reached the station. Maybe there was a conservation program. Maybe someone specialized in rehabilitation and reintroduction. She'd find a way. But tonight, they just needed to be safe. After the cubs finished eating, Sarah cleaned them gently with a damp cloth. They protested, squirming and chittering, but she persisted. Their fur was matted with dust and debris from wherever they'd been hiding before finding her quarters. Once clean, their coats gleamed with an iridescent quality, shifting between deep blue and purple depending on the light. "You're beautiful," Sarah told them. "Absolutely beautiful." As ship's night cycle began, the overhead lights dimmed to a soft amber glow. Sarah lay down on her bunk, the blanket nest positioned beside her. The cubs had quieted, settling into a drowsy pile of fur and tiny claws. The smallest one, which Sarah had mentally nicknamed Pip, crawled out of the nest and onto her chest. It was lighter than she expected, all fluff and bones. Pip turned in a circle 3 times before curling up directly over Sarah's heart. Its purring, a strange, thrumming sound unlike anything she'd heard before, vibrated against her ribs. One by one, the other cubs followed. They climbed onto Sarah's stomach, her legs, even one adventurous soul who claimed the space beside her head on the pillow. They arranged themselves like a living blanket, their combined warmth spreading through her body. Sarah knew she should probably discourage this. Maintaining professional distance from study subjects was basic protocol. These creatures would grow into powerful predators. Bonding with them was foolish. But as she lay there in the dim light, surrounded by sleeping cubs who trusted her completely, Sarah couldn't bring herself to care about protocol. She thought about humanity's journey into the stars. For centuries, humans had been classified as weak by galactic standards. No natural weapons, no armor, no venom or enhanced senses, just soft skin, blunt teeth, and a stubborn refusal to give up. Yet humans had one advantage that puzzled every other species: pack bonding. The ability to look at something dangerous, something that should trigger fear and avoidance, and instead think, I'm going to befriend this. Humans had done it on Earth with wolves, turning apex predators into loyal companions. They'd done it with horses, with hawks, with creatures that by all logic should have been left alone. And now, apparently, Sarah was continuing that proud tradition 30 light years from home. The white-chested cub, whom Sarah decided to call Sentinel, opened one eye and regarded her. For a moment, predator and human simply looked at each other. Then Sentinel's eye closed again, and the cub's purring joined the chorus. Sarah's tablet buzzed with a message. She carefully extracted one arm from beneath the pile of cubs and checked the screen. It was from Captain Reeves, a routine check-in asking all crew to confirm their status before the night cycle. She typed back a simple response. All secure, resting well, no issues to report. It wasn't exactly a lie. Everything was secure. She was resting. And while 6 predator cubs hiding in her quarters might be considered an issue by some definitions, Sarah chose to interpret it differently. These weren't issues. They were responsibilities. They were trust given freely by creatures who had nowhere else to turn, and Sarah would be damned if she betrayed that trust. She set the tablet aside and let her hand rest gently on Pip's tiny back. The cub's heartbeat was rapid, fluttering like a hummingbird's wings. So fragile, so dependent. In a few months, this same creature would be capable of incredible violence, programmed by millions of years of evolution to hunt and kill. But tonight, Pip was just a baby who needed warmth and safety. Sarah's eyes grew heavy. The steady rumble of the ship's engines combined with the cub's purring created a soothing symphony. She thought about the morning, about the challenges of keeping 6 growing predators hidden and fed. She thought about the eventual explanations she'd have to give, the consequences she might face. But those were problems for tomorrow. Tonight, there were simply 6 cubs who had chosen to trust a human, who had crawled inside her blanket seeking shelter and found acceptance instead of fear, who purred against her skin as if they'd known her forever. Sarah smiled in the darkness, her arms protectively curved around her unlikely charges. Let the galaxy think what it wanted about humans. Let them puzzle over humanity's strange instinct to protect and nurture even that which could destroy them. She wouldn't change it for anything. As sleep finally claimed her, Sarah's last conscious thought was simple and warm. Tomorrow, she'd need to find 6 tiny collars and start teaching them their names. Because these cubs weren't specimens or security threats or protocol violations. They were hers now. And she was theirs. The ship sailed on through the black ocean of space, carrying its crew, its cargo, and its secret. In quarters 7B, a human woman slept peacefully beneath a blanket of purring predators, and for that moment, in the vast and often hostile universe, there was nothing but trust and warmth and the quiet miracle of connection across species. The cubs shifted in their sleep, tiny claws kneading gently against Sarah's clothes. Somewhere in their young minds, perhaps they dreamed of their mother, of their lost home. But their hearts, pressed against the human who had chosen kindness over fear, beat steady and calm. They were safe, and morning would come soon enough, bringing whatever challenges it held. But tonight, in the gentle darkness of ship's night, there was only this, the simple, profound truth that compassion needs no protocol, no permission, no logical justification. Sometimes a smile and an open blanket are enough to change everything.